What's up? Welcome back to my channel, or for the first time if you're new, I'm Sylvan, and today I'm going to be reacting to Mizuki's character teaser, Dining on a Dish of Dreams. I will admit, I'm not as familiar with things of Mizuki's character overall. I haven't looked into her that much, because I'm just not as interested in her as some of the other characters, but I like her design, and I'm curious to learn more about her still nonetheless. So feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, leave a comment on your thoughts, and let's get into this. I like the style of this already. This is really unique for a teaser. Okay, I didn't get a chance to read all that. The different ratio is interesting. It's also like full animation.
Don't be nervous. Come right on in.
Oh, and then expands once we enter. Interesting. I love the sort of Escher-style stairs.
When we suppress our emotions, our dreams are where they manifest themselves.
Right, she has stuff to do with dreams, makes sense.
And the deeper we bury them, the more likely they are to manifest as nightmares.
Okay.
My job
Nice transition.
is to help you digest those emotions.
Oh, a nice visual metaphor with that, then.
I'm not a kid anymore. I can do this on my own.
Oh.
You don't want your parents to worry. I understand. But keeping everything bottled up will only worry them all the more.
I love how this looks.
You're doing just great. It's okay to need help sometimes.
Flying through the dream. Aww. Landing in the arms of
parents. There's no harm in
parents.
being a kid again. Once in a while.
That's true. Oh, and now that we're in reality, we enter the normal style. That is great! I love that visually.
Welcome. Now, what can I help you with today?
All right. Interesting. I'm really into how this looks. I'm a real big fan of how this starts, with it just sort of being silent and we have this sound of the film, and the visuals matching that as the perspective is a little bit more caged in. Reality and dreams are two separate worlds, yet emotion serves as a bridge between them. Okay, interesting. Often feelings and fears we have in the real world translate into our dreams, and at least for some people, ideas that manifest in their dreams can serve as anxieties manifest in reality. So I can very much see that concept of emotion being a bridge between the two. And then we have this cute little moment where one customer leaves, and then the moment they're gone, she just sort of slumps over a little bit. Not enough to completely like break from her posture and appearance, but it's just that subtle slump of, I don't need to be putting as much effort right now into my appearance so I can relax a little bit. This clearly shows she's working hard, she's taking those moments of rest when she can between customers, and we see here then approaching another potential customer. I'm calling them customers, but I honestly don't know enough about Mizuki to know if this is actually a business of hers or if she just helps people. Feel free to mention that in the comments if we know. But as I said, a potential customer who seems actually a bit reluctant to do this. They may not necessarily actually believe that this will actually help them necessarily, but they came nonetheless. They have an issue that presumably up till now coming here they haven't been able to solve, and as they stand outside of the threshold of the room, nervously trying to decide what to do, Mizuki silently comes up, takes her hand, welcomes her inside, and says, "Don't be nervous. Come right on in." And it's as we pass through this threshold into her realm that it becomes full screen, and we immediately are in the realm of dreams. Mizuki is everywhere, all over the place, going up and down stairs, moving through spaces that are impossible in reality. As I described in the reaction, they have this very MC Escher esque styling to them with all of the stairs going in constantly different directions. But on top of how incomprehensible and beyond reality everything here is, it is also in these bright sort of pastel colors, which gives it this fantastical element, which very much makes it have this dreamlike feeling. It is simultaneously fantastical and impossible, and Mizuki has brought her into this world. We have a nice transition, which then brings us to this interesting creature, which we spend a little time just on, which I find interesting design-wise. Given that we're dealing with dreams and stuff, looking at this thing, the first thing looking at its face that I think of is Star Rail Tuspers, given that they sort of land in a similar conceptual space, and though they don't look identical, they have a similar sort of face. But then here we have Mizuki speaking up, effectively picking up of writing that we had, talking about emotions being the bridge between reality and dreams. Mizuki explains, when we suppress our emotions, our dreams are where they manifest themselves. If emotions are the bridge between the two and can exist in both, if we do our best to suppress our emotions, take them out of reality, they will merely cross that bridge to the dream world and manifest there fully. And it's as she's describing this that this Tusper type creature begins to distort and flicker into a more incomprehensible and dark version of itself. And the deeper we bury them, the more likely they are to manifest as nightmares. It's interesting to imagine that there is a connection like that. It does an interesting thing of, it creates a tangible representation of why suppressing your emotions is a bad thing, because though there are plenty of reasons why suppressing your emotions isn't good in the real world, this is essentially adding a more explicit layer to it. But while this is being said, we have this really fun visually jumping between various scenes that presumably are these representations of various potential nightmares. Based on the different people in the center of the shot, perhaps these are the various nightmares that the previous patients or customers that Mizuki was having at the beginning of this were having. And in some way, shape, or form here, Mizuki essentially is showing her newest patient and customer what that looks like, how it's developed in other people, and then we move on after that to her specifically. But it's essentially this show of what these nightmares could look like. But there are a few details we can pick up here to sort of get at a bit of the essence of what these all are about. We have the one woman who is drowning, essentially on a stage surrounded by watchful eyes. Clearly something about being observed, being oppressive. I'm less sure about this one, but I suppose could be connected to a sense of confusion and lack of direction or understanding of what to do, given all of the broken stairs going in all kinds of directions, as just in the center, the person is head in hands, floating amongst it all. And then this last guy, I'm not explicitly sure, but there definitely is almost like a performative element here for sure. There's all these mics listening to him as he's tied up off the ground, these ribbons coming infinitely out of his mouth. He, in all likelihood, is some kind of performer, stage performer, something like that. Perhaps he feels that he's restrained by this in some way, tied down, forced to perform, something along those lines. Then we have this really cool transition here, where Mizuki uses a fork to take a piece out of the scene, which then in the next part we see is a cake. It's not the only good transition in here. There's a lot of really seamless transitions. I just took particular note of this one because I like it. And as she does this, she says, "My job is to help you digest these emotions." And as I called out during the actual reaction, combining the wording of her helping people to digest their emotions when we are shown visuals of her eating, which is a really cool pairing of visuals and concepts. And then here, we finally get to essentially the beginning of what the issue with this person is. They are lying down, not fully curled up, but on their side, sort of tucked into themselves. And based on their placement on this plate, it does a good job of making it so that the two figures on the plate are sort of huddled around her, presumably representing her parents. But as we begin to slowly move into that shot, there's this brief moment where we get a shot of all of these padlocks, all tangled and intertwined together. It's a mess of locks all interchained together, preventing any of them from actually being opened. And given that it's just this brief flash before we return to the previous imagery, it immediately evokes the idea that something about this scenario is entrapping her, which, based on what we see later, is in all likelihood about this idea of being overly coddled by her parents, thinking that they're too over controlling or protective, and we get her feeling on such a thing right here, a moment later as she says, "I'm not a kid anymore." But it's here that we begin to have these dark distortions begin to come out around her, a representation of suppressed emotions becoming nightmares that we saw before. She's falling down into the deep end, and she's huddled up more now. And alongside that lock imagery, we continue to have these very brief cutaways to weird visuals. This one of what looks like her, but over her face is this blank void that within it is her again, and it's infinitely going, and we move into it. There's a Matryoshka doll that looks like her. There's this layering of the self happening here. And this one in particular, the outer one isn't crying, but the inner one is, which in my mind, based on her words seeming to contradict her suffering almost, when she says, "I can do this on my own," it brings to the idea that she is suffering on the inside, but she is putting up barriers and walls to try to make herself seem like she's doing fine, put up a brave face. But really she's just suppressing those emotions, and they're building up in the dream world. But then, before anything can go too wrong, we see the silhouette of Mizuki move in. He sighs and breaks it all by giving her a big ol' hug. The plate shatters, we're in bright blue skies, full color again, and immediately all of this sort of vague visuals that we were having that, if you're really paying attention and sifting through it, you can sort of maybe pick up on, are stated more explicitly by Mizuki, saying, "You don't want your parents to worry. I understand." And as she says this, these little nightmare creatures begin to come down on them again, but she just fights them away with her umbrella as they poof into these more colorful pastels, shielding her from all of her nightmares as she continues. But keeping everything bottled up will only worry them all the more. You don't want your parents to worry, you want them to think that you're okay. But if you are just hiding behind these built-up walls you've made and won't communicate to them, they're gonna worry something is wrong, they won't know how you're feeling, and that'll make them concerned. And then here we have this great little moment where Mizuki was defending her with the umbrella, but now she offers for her to help in holding the umbrella against this tide of nightmares, as she reassures, "You're doing great. It's okay to need help sometimes," as the two of them work together to solve her issue. And now that everything is happy, they freely fly down to the ground, and she falls into her parents' arms, happy. Her and her family embrace, this time lovingly, no sense of restraint in it. And then, to just sort of finish things off, Mizuki adds that there's no harm in being a kid once in a while. It's important to be responsible and to do what you need to do, but that doesn't mean you can't let your parents take care of you sometimes. You can't let yourself go and get help. No person can be a responsible adult every second of every day. They need support, they need help, they need these emotional structures that family and friends can provide. And it's here that we then shift back into reality. And in that same moment, we shift into the conventional Genshin teaser style, which I really love as a visual distinction. The one interesting thing about that, though, is that it does imply that all the way back at the beginning here, when she's first peeking into the doorway, unsure if she should really come in, the end bit being in a different art style implies that at this point, she was already in her dreams. Mizuki had already infiltrated her dreams to help her, she just didn't realize it at this point, which in many ways is very in line with dreams. This idea that when you start dreaming, you don't realize you're dreaming. This scenario just gets concocted up and you live through it until something strange happens, something that doesn't make sense happen, and it expands the horizons. At which point you begin to realize you're in a dream, but even then you may not be able to control it, and there might be scary things that happen to you. Things that are based off of real life anxieties and concerns you have, they'll begin to boil up, and even if you know you're in a dream, you may not be able to do anything about it. But with a little guidance, you're able to get past that and enter this more lucid state where you're able to simply enjoy the dream and move past all of your anxieties, and potentially even process some of these issues you have. And then we pull out to show comforting and tucking in this person who she has now helped get over this issue she has via her dreams. At which point she has sat down, she has completed her one job, and then another comes. There's a knock on the door, her job continues, and that's where it's left. I'm a big fan of this. I imagine if I was more hyped for her as a character, I'd be even more excited about this. But even knowing next to nothing about her as a character, and not necessarily being the most hype for her release, I still greatly enjoy this for visually what it's giving us and aesthetically what it's giving us. But beyond that, I don't necessarily have like a ton to say about this, so I think I'll leave things there. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, leave a comment on your thoughts, and I hope you all had a great day. Goodbye.